Hi, this is part 3 of our IMA806 intercom repair, or perhaps it's really part 2A. First, brief explanation. The last segment of the part 2 video, when we last left off, I was troubleshooting the components on this board. As I was working through it, the last part you saw was I was going to stop and replace a couple components because I found ones that were seriously flawed, it looked like. However, the last segment of part 2, someone forgot to push the record button and it didn't get recorded. Let's do a brief recap. The end of part 2, part you didn't get to see, was pretty uneventful. I replaced a couple components that were bad on this board, and then found more things that were wrong, and I didn't have all the parts on hand that I needed to continue on. So at that point I was stopping because I had to make a parts order, and the parts order came in yesterday. After receiving the parts order, I replaced more parts and then put the set back together, and now the set fundamentally works, which is good. I didn't record that because yesterday was really busy and I didn't really have the time to set up. I needed to get more things done yesterday. So this is sort of a recap to get you up to speed, but you will get to see the set work at the end. After getting the set fundamentally working, now it was time to go through each of the boards and take care of issues that come up simply because of the age of the Master Station. Now, if you recall, and I think it was in part 1, I showed in the service manual the list of all of the different updates and changes that were done to boards during production and changes that needed to be done on existing sets that were manufactured before those changes took place. As I went through each board, I replaced components that needed to be replaced due to age, but I also did modifications that were recommended in the service manual to bring this particular 806 up to the final spec just before it was discontinued. So on here we have some components that were added in. There's 3 resistors, there's an extra capacitor here, there's 3 diodes. There were many components that were placed on this side of the board. 2 of them were updated with different values. The service manual doesn't explain fully why they want all of that done. It isn't like, oh, you have to add this diode because. They don't do that. You just take it on faith that the engineer knows what he's talking about. I could sit down and work through the schematic and figure it out and come up with all the reasons why, but at the end it doesn't really matter because it's what they say to do. So that was done. This is the AM/FM tuner module. No real changes made on this other than replacing components for age. This is basically the same standard analog tuner module that's used in all Nutone intercom systems starting in 1973 through the end of 1995 would be the last year it was used, except it has this little add-on board. This is called a prescaler board. This is the board that senses the frequency that the tuner is tuned to and then sends that information to the digital display. So it's not a digital tuner, it's an analog tuner. Analog is mechanical with a digital readout. This board updated, bad components replaced, all of that. That was easy. Well, it wasn't easy, but it's fairly straightforward. This is the display board here, just a couple components to change, no real modifications to this. And this is the intercom board, and this was components to be replaced. There were a couple modifications. Mostly it was changing out resistor values and changing a couple diodes. The other thing on this is sort of a board that always requires a fair amount of maintenance because you have a slide switch here, which is pretty standard, but then you have these fader controls here. Fader controls are sliding potentiometers. And as was done in the late 70s, a lot of sets that have these type of fader controls, these are plastic bodies, not metal. They're a little on the flimsy side, and they become very hard to move as they get older. It's almost all plastic construction except for the contacts inside. So these were cleaned thoroughly with our Deoxit D5. Then they were treated with the Deoxit F5, which is fader lube, which helps them move more freely. But even at that, the plastic inherently tends to want to sort of grab as you try to slide the control with the knob, which makes it frustrating and difficult to use. So then we add fader grease. Fader grease is a dielectric jelly that you squirt inside the little slot and then you work it back and forth. So now these all move very freely, which is nice because otherwise there'll be a complaint about that. And then there's these little push button switches. Those were just cleaned to get rid of the oxidation on them. So all of that was taken care of. Finally, at the end, this is a sack of all the parts that were replaced. And you can see, this is my favorite thing to do. People like this in the videos. That's all the parts that were replaced to rebuild an IMA806. There were a lot. It will, or it should, I'm pretty sure, when I put it all back together, which will happen shortly, it should all work really well, probably better than it has in a very long time. So let me show you a couple other things that were taken care of while I was working on it, and then I'm going to put it all back together. This is our faceplate for our IMA806, and we talked in a previous part about the 4 intercom buttons here and how these can become a problem because the 4 buttons are actually one assembly, which I'll show you, and it breaks loose. So the way it's supposed to work is if you push the end call button, only this button moves and these 3 stay stationary. When it breaks loose, when you push this one, they all want to flop in and out like this, and it messes up the way it works. Why does it mess it up the way it works? Well, because this is the switchboard assembly. This sits on the back of the faceplate like this. It's upside down. All the electrons are going to fall out. And the way this was designed, Nutone did something new and different. It's the only time they ever did it, and I don't know whether they stopped doing it because of cost or because of reliability, or maybe they just thought it was all jinx because it was in an 806. Instead of the 4 intercom buttons pushing mechanical switches like you have here, they decided to do something fancy. And the fancy part is, and you might be able to see it pretty well, is here's switch number 1 and switch number 2 and switch number 3 and switch number 4. What are these? These are reed switches, and they're encased in little glass envelopes. I don't know whether there's a vacuum inside of them, like a vacuum tube would have, where all the air has been sucked out and it's in a vacuum, or whether it's not. I don't really know that. It doesn't say anywhere. But a reed switch is 2 very thin pieces of metal, very, very thin. And on the back of the buttons right here, these little light colored portions here, 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 and here, those are magnets. So when you push the button, it moves, let's see, when you push the button, it moves the magnet up against the glass envelope, and the magnetic force sucks the very, very thin switch contacts together, and it makes a closure. The idea behind this, I think, was, or the motivation behind this, I think, was to get rid of the problem of having noisy push button switches when you operate the intercom. They didn't carry through with this. This is the only model that used anything like this. Like I said, I don't know whether it's a cost issue or something else. It was an interesting idea, but it never went anywhere. So didn't have to do anything to this. There's not much on that, but we did have to repair these because they were broken off. So what happens to these? Well, the way this was manufactured, on the back of the faceplate, there are little plastic posts that stick up, and I think I can show you one. It's kind of like this one right here. It's a little plastic post. And then the 4 switch assembly panel gets slid down over the posts, and then this metal strip with holes in it is placed over it to help reinforce it and hold it down. And then the plastic posts are, which are called heat stakes because when you heat them they melt, they're melted down to, and then they squish out against the metal piece, and that's what holds it all in place. What happens to these over time is the little plastic posts snap off, the little molded, deformed parts here, the plastic gets brittle or whatever. With all the pushing against it, like this, they snap off, and if enough of them snap off, then the whole thing becomes loose. Now, Nutone used to make a, quote, repair kit for this, which I've only done a couple of them. It was sort of a plastic block kind of thing that you took all this apart, and you were supposed to glue it down, and I don't recall it actually working all that well. So we needed to come up with a solution because these have to be fixed in place. They can't just be floating around on here. So what I did was I removed it completely, very carefully. I cleaned everything. I put some super glue behind the top part of the button assembly and then squished it all down and squeezed it as tight as I possibly could, put the metal strip back on, remelted the heat stakes to flare them out some more, but that won't be good enough all on its own. It's got to be stronger than that, because at that point you're relying again on just a little plastic post to hold it all together, and you know they're going to break. And when are they going to break? The fourth time the customer pushes the button, and then she's on the phone and it's like, you just fixed it and now the buttons are loose again. So I tried to come up with an idea of how to reinforce it and hold it all in place. And what I used was, here in the shop I keep some of these. These are little bamboo skewers. See if I can get one out here. Like this. I keep these because they're pointy on the end and they don't cost very much. And when you've got to like spread glue around or something, or a little lubricant or whatever it is you got to do, having a pointy stick works really well. And bamboo is very, very strong because of its fibers and stuff. So what I did was I took one of these, I cut a piece the width of the button assembly, and then two shorter pieces for the sides, put a lot more gel super glue underneath this, and then put the bamboo piece down and the pieces on the ends, and then put more super glue to basically glue it all together. So the bamboo is glued to the back of the faceplate, to the top of the button assembly, the top edge. There's super glue underneath the button assembly, and also here on the ends, because when you push the end ones, there's going to be more stress here on the end. And the whole idea behind this is you don't want to allow any part of it to move any more than you possibly need it to, just so you can push the buttons. And by having all of this at the top, which is probably about the top quarter of the height of the whole thing, seriously glued in place, it's going to help reinforce it and hold it. The bamboo's not going to break, the super glue is not going to fall apart. It's the best solution I could come up with, and I let it dry for a couple of days to make sure that it would be okay, and it seems like it was a pretty good fix. So that was done, and then of course after I did all of that and it was dried thoroughly, all of this was washed and cleaned because it was all pretty dusty and dirty inside, and now it's time to put it all back together. I'm back. More time has passed than you would think. Once I got the 806 all reassembled, then there were little problems that needed to be addressed. The first thing that had to be done was my very clever, I thought, idea of fixing the 4 push buttons didn't work out exactly the way I would have thought, because the problem with it was these were not sitting flat against the back of the faceplate as much as they needed to. They were tipped up a little bit, which made the magnets move too close to the reed switches, and it was still acting as if somebody was pushing all the buttons at one time. The solution was reasonably simple. I showed you the little switchboard assembly, the one with the little reed switches on it. That gets mounted onto 2 posts on the back of the faceplate with 2 screws. And what I did was I put some little washers between the board and the plastic standoffs that the screws went through to basically shim the board up away from the magnets on the back of the push buttons a little bit, and that solved that problem. That was good. See, I'm clever once again. Maybe. We'll see. On a set like this, and the customer will be told, if you do use the intercom, which she says she doesn't really do, these need to be pushed lightly and carefully. You don't want to push them so hard with your thumb that your thumb turns white because you're pushing as hard as you possibly can, because you'll break them again. So has to be used carefully because it is a known problem. One of the other things I'll point out on 806s is this is where our LED display is. 806s do not have a clock. You would look at this and expect, well, it should show the time there all the time, but it doesn't. There is no clock. It's just the readout for the AM and FM radio stations. It's on now, it's powered up. See, but you don't know it's powered up because there's no light to indicate that it's powered up. Oh, one of the other things that came up during the final testing of it was, this is my test speaker. You saw this in the other parts of this series. Right in the middle of the testing, this thing developed a problem. This is the chapter in the book of Welcome to My World. This has only ever been a test speaker. I don't know how long I've used this as a test speaker, and I don't remember if it was brand new. It probably was. All of a sudden it decided to develop a problem. So that one will get put off to the side, and no, I probably will never fix it, because why would I? So I did go and find one of my other ones. Now we have a nice brown one that matches. Whoops. Intercom functions on the remote stations, and to sort of point this out, let me show you. I don't know if I've showed you this before or not. This is the circuit board out of a remote station. There's a lot going on here. So the way you look at a system like this is, it's like every station is a master station. Not exactly, but kind of. Lots of active electronics, much more than your standard remote station, which has like 3 or 4 push buttons and a volume control. So these can go bad. And in fact, in the troubleshooting guide, a lot of the problems that you would maybe find in there when you're trying to diagnose the system is you have a bad remote speaker. So before we turn the music on, let's try the intercom. We'll start here at the master station. We have inside patio talk and in call, also door talk. Phone talk, there's no phone connection in this system, so we don't have to worry about that. So if we do inside patio talk, there will be feedback. I have the intercom volumes turned down quite a bit. And that's the hands-free reply. Door talk. That works. End call. Oh, and this is the first model that they ever made that there's, when you activate the intercom, it automatically mutes the music, and then end call ends the intercom call and restores the music back. So from the remote station, inside patio talk, don't touch the back of the board. That works. Door talk. That works also. And now we can turn the music on. So on here, there's our radio station. We'll just make this really low, you know, copyright and all that. So if you have the radio playing and you activate the intercom, it mutes the radio, and then you push end call and it comes back. Same thing here. Just like it should. It functions as well as you could hope that any 806 would. It functions completely, and it was a very interesting and challenging repair. If I don't have to fix another one for another 8 years, that's probably all right. So that concludes the saga of repairing a customer's IMA806. Hope you found this interesting. I doubt it'll be helpful to too many people, because how many of these are left in the world? Not that many, I don't think. I don't know. If you did, or it might, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that will help us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications. And every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.